Hello, hello. Heather Jean here, Confidence Through Cabaret. We are talking all things confidence, and today we are talking about creativity. I've just been doing a 5-day spring clean challenge, and today is day 2 as we're recording this. And we were talking about creativity in terms of, really being able to tap into, options and play and fun and creative people tend to be more optimistic and tend to be, able to see various options, not just have one route mapped out for themselves. And so I'm very excited to introduce to you my guest for today. I know nobody better and able to talk about creativity than my guest today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about them and then I will bring them on. Just while we're here, if you are listening to this on podcast, you should know that Confidence Through Cabaret on YouTube will have the vodcast, the video version of this. If you're here on YouTube with us, then know that there is an audio version anywhere you get your podcast. Check out Confidence Through Cabaret. So with that all said, let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. My guest is a natural born performer. I mean, oh my goodness, like I can't imagine this person if they didn't have this creativity and this expression in their life. They are an inspiration for me about being unapologetic and owning your space and stepping into your spotlight, and encourage others to do the same, which is such a beautiful thing to be able to share with the world. So my guest today has been a cabaret performer, host, drag artist for over 10 years, has worked in the United States, has worked in across Europe and here in the UK where we both are. They are also a recording artist. So my guest today created an album during lockdown for the first time, just learning their own way, which is so inspiring. And that comes from being creative, right? That's for like looking at creative solutions and looking for ways that you can do things and not reasons why you can't. And my guest today is also an amazing artist, as in drawing. I just it's breathtaking. We're going to talk about that. So please join me in welcoming, I was going to say to the stage, but yes, it is the stage because this is our stage. Please join me in welcoming the incomparable, fabulous, and inspiring Dis.
Hi, hello. Hi. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. That was wonderful to hear. Thank you so much.
Oh, but it's true. It's every word of it is true. Also, I should say this is one of the co-pioneers of Confidence Through Cabaret back in the day.
This is
So,
true. This is true.
right? Not only
Right.
recording artists during lockdown, not only doing online cabaret shows, not only creating art and visuals, but also co-pioneering a company that is now Confidence Through Cabaret.
Woo!
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, what is creativity, Dis?
Well, I mean, I don't think you can sum it up in, say, one word. I don't think there's a specific process that works for everybody, and I don't think creativity looks the same for everybody. So sometimes I think we get bogged down in the idea that when we say, for instance, like when we say artist, there's like a very specific set of images that gets conjured up by that. So, for instance, like you said, like fine art, with drawing, painting, musicianship, things like that. But there's also any number of different disciplines that can be considered part of the artistic canon, crafting and doing lots of different things. So art and creativity can come and manifest in your life in a number of different ways. I like to think of it as the place where you can conceptualize, you can create and sort of foster new ideas or explore ideas. It's also about bringing a certain amount of joy and empathy and emotion into your life. So I think it's anywhere within your life that you feel like you can bring new things into the world, and also stimulate your own mind into creating and visualizing brand new things for yourself and those around you. It's a force as much as it is anything else.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that you're talking about it being individual because I would never have thought about myself as a creative person, right? Because
Right.
I judge what I'm doing, right? So I
Mhm.
draw something and then I go, "Ooh, that's terrible," and then I sing and I, "Ooh, that's terrible," and then do you know? So when we judge those things,
Mhm.
then it stifles our creativity
Yeah.
because we're led to believe that there's a way that is supposed to be.
Yes, yeah, and that it has to fit within these codified things. So it has to be painting, drawing, singing. It can't be any number of other things. Like it can't be, you know, just sometimes curating your space. There is an absolute art to creating a space and to creating an environment where you feel stimulated or relaxed. One of those flip sides of the coins. There's an art to that, and I think sometimes we get bogged down in the idea that art has to be a specific practice or a grand practice, when in fact it can be entirely. It should be, I think, in lots of ways, entirely personal.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, even if you're somebody, you're a business person, and you need to solve problems in your business.
Mhm.
Creativity comes into that. You know,
Absolutely.
if you have any conflict with people, whether that's in various forms of relationships, or whether that's even people that you don't know, then how you foster that relationship and that communication is about creativity.
Exactly. I find it hard to define it without using the term create as well, because the term sort of lies itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anywhere you feel that you can bring something new or bring something totally uniquely yours, of your perspective, that doesn't mean it has to be a revolutionarily new, brand new genre or whatever. The minute it comes from you, it still has its uniqueness, its own voice when it comes from a true place of ownership and identification.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've both worked in business for a
Mm.
long time now, and you'll have come across businesses where they stifle the creativity. They tell you what to say, how long to be on a call, or
Yeah,
a ticket or item, or what to say, or
yeah,
and once that happens, that business doesn't tap into
hmm,
creating anything
yeah,
new.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely.
And of course, those businesses ultimately they might succeed for a while that's trending, but then of course, ultimately it fails because they're
Mm.
not creating something new.
Yes, very true. I think there has to be a form of innovation in business, whether or not you're changing your position to encounter potential new development within that industry, or if you're trying to retroactively work against away from something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about like you created everything for two albums, which you have now
Yes.
released, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much.
So where does that start when you are creating an album? What's the first bit?
Well, so the first record, Fragments, came very came very specifically from from the fact that I was definitely having some form of breakdown. So so there was a lot of stuff going on. But specifically, I think I'd always wanted to create something. I always wanted to create something that didn't sound like other stuff that was going around, that wasn't being made by other people who would be considered within my oeuvre. Um, I wanted to do something that was not reliant on typical instrumentation. A lot of the artists that I really admire and a lot of the performers that I've really grown to love over the years, have been people who have taken things, instruments sometimes, not always, and tried to find a way of playing them or making them into a musical instrument or creating a form of art sonically through their use. People like Diamanda Galas and Throbbing Gristle and Cabaret Voltaire. How quickly were you waiting for me to say Diamanda? Um,
That was always going to happen.
right, it was always going to happen. It was always going to happen. But people from the post-punk and punk generations, no wave and things like that, as well as jazz. Anyone who plays an instrument in a way that makes it sound completely different to the way you would expect it to be played, which gives you a lot of freedom. Because if you're trying to use equipment that you don't have a full grasp on, and you don't have access to instrumentation, or don't even have the knowledge and basis of how to play those instruments, you start to look at things in a different way and go, well, what can I do to make that a possibility? So, okay, I don't have a single drum, but I do have a cheap online drum programming software that I can use. Or alternatively, I can go outside, smash a bunch of things and record them and then loop them and figure out how to loop things. So that's what I did. I was lucky enough to have access to a certain amount of technology, in that I have a decent computer with, GarageBand on it that I could input this stuff in. But largely, I didn't know what I was doing. So necessity is the mother of invention. You just keep going. Is the record perfect? No, it is not. Is it a fully realized discussion with nuance, to the stuff that I was exploring with that particular record? No, it is not. Do I still love it? Absolutely. Yes, I do. And it informed a lot of the stuff that has now put me onto the second EP, which now has taken me onto my actual full second album, which is a lot more sort of narrative and story based. So, and a lot more fully realized, I like to think. Like there's a lot more depth and level to it, and there's a lot more that I've been able to achieve, and articulate with it as well.
Beautiful. So you took your learning from your first album,
Mm-hmm.
and then you sort of said, okay, so now how do I grow that and extend that?
Yeah.
And see, that's the thing. Like a lot of us would have gone, well, I don't know how. I don't play an instrument. I don't know how to use the software, so I can't do an album, even though I'd love to. And
Absolutely.
that tyranny of how often stops us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it stopped me for years. Like, do not get me wrong, it stopped me for years. I was always relying on somebody else to create the music for me and to channel whatever, and to be able to articulate the sound as I wanted to hear it. And at a certain point, you get a bit frustrated with the having to rely on others. But you also, I was in a very specific set of circumstances in the fact that we were in the first pandemic, when I first touched this stuff. I had been writing for a long time. I'd been writing for years and been catching bits and pieces, and then were drawing my inspirations in. But I hadn't, taken that step to do something myself. I'd started working with a friend of mine, but the pandemic again came in, and that all shut down. So the question was, are you going to wait for potentially 2 years? Because I felt like I could see this was a long period of time that was coming up. Am I going to wait for years to do this, or am I going to just try it? It may not work. It may fail. It may be dreadful. Who cares? At this point, the world is falling apart. I might as well do something that's mine. If I fail, at least I tried. If I fail, at
Yeah.
least.
And you might never have made that time to
Yeah.
do that, or afforded yourself that time, except that we were locked away. So,
Yeah, exactly.
isolation had a lot of gifts to it. And I
Yes, it
can
did.
remember having conversations with you about just even like attachments between a
Mhm.
projector and a laptop.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
had a little bag of plugs. It's kind of
Yeah.
weird. Try these. I mean, it goes back to that, to some real basics. And I think, that the inspiration that you bring from going from that to creating something
Mm.
that you put out there into the world is just incredible. And it's something that everyone should be able to take inspiration from, and to take note of, that
Mm.
you can do that.
Right. And art should be available to everybody. I think artistic expression should be available to everybody, and everybody should have the ability, or the option to enjoy when they want to. I think we often gatekeep art forms quite heavily, which is a huge problem. We also, I think as much as we rely on them culturally, and I mean that across the board, we rely on art culturally as a society to function. We just do. Without it, you go mad. It just turns into a dispassionate mess. You see that in spite of that, society still treats art as it is negligible. You know, if you watch the BBC in the UK, we have the BBC News and Sport. Art does not really come into that at all. You'll have half an hour of sports scores, but you know, nothing of the arts, in spite of the fact that this brings in more money to the economy than any other any other industries. We relied on it in the pandemic. It is something that allowed people to keep going and to do different things and to feel something when a lot of the time it was just crushing, you know. Art is something that everybody has the option and the ability to exercise in. So what I mean by that is that if you feel like you cannot draw, cannot sing, cannot dance, you know, I cannot do this, X, Y, and Z, you know, insert specific limiting belief here. I kind of would remind you to say, well, who told me that? What reason did they have, and what stake did they have into that? Because truthfully, who starts off perfect in any of these disciplines? It is a very rare thing that someone will pick up a pencil and have the immediate aptitude to do it. It is not, you know, not everybody can sit down and be, you know, a young Mozart or, you know, any of these people. It's not possible for everybody. It takes practice, it takes time, it takes mistakes primarily. Mistakes are the biggest portion of it, that and procrastination. But everybody has the option to indulge in those things, whether that is if you say, for instance, you feel like drawing is not your thing, but you really like to just move your body, you know, incorporating just, you know, 10-15 minutes of just moving around to music. It's an art form. It's called dance. Explore it, express it. Everybody can dance. Everybody can dance, majoritively speaking. Even if that's just moving in place, even if that's just tilting the head, you know, even if that's just moving to the rhythm of a song, it's a form of art. It's a form of you expressing yourself. It doesn't have to be for anybody else as well. That's the great thing about art, as much as it is, you know, and does draw other people in, as much as it allows for, as much as it allows to buoy the experience of others. You know, like we all watched, I'm sure, 100 hours of different TV and movies during lockdown, trying to stimulate ourselves. It doesn't have to be for somebody else. It can be just for you, which is another wonderful part of it. It's very enriching to have that inner world of thoughts and emotions and explorations, you know. I think it's really important to remind ourselves that you are not limited to your artistic expression. Nobody gets to tell you whether or not it's good or bad. And nobody gets to tell you whether or not you can enjoy an art form. It is not limited to somebody else's experience of you. It is your experience. And that's the wonderful thing about art.
And that is so well said. Thank you for saying that. Because we are conditioned, you know, when I was a teenager, young teenager, like early teens, I was told I couldn't take art classes because I couldn't draw or paint or whatever. And surely the reason why you take it is to learn to do that.
Yeah.
Same with, and I think this is not only but especially true for boys.
Mm-hmm.
They're told not to dance, like that you can't dance and hold it in. And I raised 3 boys and made sure that they danced and that they knew they could dance and that they knew that they could sing. Whether they choose to or not is a different thing.
Sure.
But there was no way they were going to be allowed for anybody else to tell them you can't dance or you shouldn't dance. And yet how many grown men, and it's not just men, but especially men, you know, they don't feel comfortable to dance. And so they, you
they'll
know,
stand at the edge of the dance floor looking in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll see, you know, at a school dance, the girls will be dancing with each other and the boys are kind of, this isn't cool. And they all
Patriarchy, man. Patriarchy.
Patriarchy again. I mean, honestly, all roads lead back to the patriarchy, honestly. But you know, I fully wanted to combat that. And even then there was a lot of resistance because I put my boys in dance classes
and
in singing classes. And And what was interesting was that it got to a certain point where the other boys would be saying, "You do that? That's uncool."
Mhm.
Whether they wanted to secretly do it or not didn't
Yeah.
matter. They were told it's not cool.
Yeah.
I don't have natural rhythm.
Right. Okay.
As in, I'm constantly told, and a very uh, a, a common friend of ours, let's say, many times in dance classes,
Oh
told me
God.
somebody's off rhythm, it's you. And I would go, well, cool, but this is how I want to move. And also, I'm paying for the dance class, and
Right.
I'm an adult now, so I can move how I want to, not necessarily to the rhythm that you're hearing.
Right.
But I had to learn that because
Mhm.
I was taught you're supposed to dance to the 4/4 count or
Right.
whatever, or
Right. Yeah.
and so you're not supposed to throw in extra little taps or movements,
Right.
and I genuinely now am at the stage where it doesn't worry me, but that took years to be able
Yeah.
to get over that, right?
Yeah.
To be able to say, this is what I'm here to express, and this is how I'm choosing to express it, and
Yeah.
to hell with everybody else. So I
Mm.
love that you've said that, about that it can be just for you. It
Yeah. It
doesn't
doesn't have
have
to
to
be
be
about other people.
Mhm.
Um, the idea is that, I think that whenever you create art, you have to give it to someone, you have to give it to the world owns it. And that's simply not true. Art can be created entirely for oneself. There are plenty of artists who specifically asked that certain works were not put on display to the public because they weren't for public consumption. Whether or not that happened, I'm quite sure is not the case. But um, there are plenty of things that artists created just entirely for themselves, as tributes for themselves or for lovers, or for the people they wanted to have very insularly within their lives. That then had to see those works put out into the public, and that wasn't their intention. Um, an artist creates work, I think, in lots of ways as a mirror to the society that they live in. Um, and sometimes that's not, you don't always want to share your full viewpoint to the world because that can actually be very vulnerable. When you're laying your heart out bare and saying this is how I feel about something, sometimes that can be extremely scary and extremely difficult um, to deal with, especially when other people's opinions are then put on it. So it's absolutely fine to create work that's just, it's a bit like dreaming, I like to think, because when we dream, we sort through the detritus of the day and everything that's going through our brains. We receive these messages and we do what we do with them. And I feel like that's what art is a lot of the time. It's our way of reconciling what we see in the world with how we feel about that. So sometimes those thoughts are unfinished and messy, and they're meant for just you. They're meant for you to just go, oh yeah, that's how I felt about that. Great, I can keep that for just me and know what that means. You know, so it doesn't have to be that you're, showing these pieces of work to lots of people. It doesn't have to be about others. It's just about you, and that's part of the beauty of this. Um, I mean, if you are producing something that is to go out into the world, yes, there is an element of, oh my God, because there always is going to be. And yes, you have no control over that. Unfortunately, once it's out there, it's out there. You can't really do much to mitigate that. But that's also kind of amazing in and of itself. It's like, you give birth to something and then it goes and does what it does. And sometimes that's an extremely rewarding experience, and sometimes it's kind of painful. But it's your expression, it's uniquely yours, and once it's out there, it's another thing that you've done. It's something you've accomplished. Um, I think I picked up one of the things that you sort of said earlier on in the sort of introduction about artists being optimists. I certainly wouldn't consider myself an optimist in many ways, but I would certainly say that after a certain period of time, I have developed a case of the, excuse the language, but the fuckets. Um, because, you know, there's any number of times people will say to me, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. And honestly, if I'd listened to all of those things, I wouldn't have toured. I wouldn't have met the people I've met. I wouldn't have had the experiences I've experienced. I wouldn't have, done the things I've done. And fuck it.
Yeah.
Because their limited beliefs are theirs and nothing to do with me. So when people have told me in the past, you shouldn't sing these songs if you want to get booked, multiple times, fine, I'll continue to sing them though. I'm still going to do that because I don't want to sing what you're singing because it doesn't interest me. You can't make this record because people won't buy it. I don't care if you buy it. It wasn't about you buying it. You can't wear this particular outfit and still be considered this. It's very frustrating that you have such a narrow view of things, but I'm going to wear whatever the hell I want. And I think when you start to adopt that, when you realize that that can be transferable, you start to open up a lot of different things. One of the things that we talked about a lot during the beginning of Confidence Through Cabaret was transferable skills. So when we both started, we were not in a great place. We were trying to figure out how we could appear so confident in one area of our lives, and yet in personal life or say work life or stage life, wherever it was, did not feel confident at all. And going through those early processes of saying, right, well, okay, why do I want to do this? How did I create this persona? How did I do these things in the first place? How can I transfer that to the other areas of my life? Is just as important this way. So it works on both sides. There is plenty of creativity and there is plenty of joy and inspiration to access that you probably access on a daily basis, but don't often get to express. So I would generally ask people, if you had the option to express something, what would it be? And if you could do that without any sort of unfettered, any problems to access or anything, what would it look like? And then you can start going, well, how can I create that on a small scale? And how can I move that forward? And how can I change that, move the needle? How can I move that needle each time and incorporate that into my own life? You don't have to write and record a record. You don't have to paint a grand scene. You don't have to do any of that. You can simply curate your space. You could grow something. Growing wonderful plants and ecosystems in your house is a great way of doing things. It's an art form in and of itself. There are plenty of ways to incorporate that play. Maybe it's just dancing on your own for 10 minutes a day with the curtains drawn and just having a great damn time. To whatever music you want. There is no one telling you what is good or bad. Ignore that. Good or bad are out the window. Every time you want to say good or bad, this is good or bad, just say, no, that's not going to work for me. It's not going to work for me. This isn't about limiting. This is about just creating unfettered.
I love that. And that for me is what optimism is about. When we allow and explore and express our creative energy, that's when we can really tap into who we are and believe in that. Right. And that's what I mean by optimism. I don't mean like, oh, this is going to sell, or this is, this is going to make me money, or this is going to, elevate my career or whatever. It's much more about just that freedom of expression, and that freeing is about being allowed and entitled and for that to be wonderful. My neighbors don't care that every Saturday night they play Don't Cry Out Loud very loud with disco lights. So I try very hard,
love that,
as a non-judgmental practice, to not go, what is their deal? Because they don't care, right? Yeah. They're enjoying it. They're dancing around their dining room, not joking, colored disco lights, music blaring. I can hear it in my house.
Why the hell not?
And there's that freedom. So That is what
Mm.
happens when we're children, right? We don't care who's watching. In fact, if
Mm.
people are watching, even better because it's fun,
Right.
right? But then somehow we go through that conditioning of no, no, no,
Mm.
don't do that. Be small, be quiet, be
Yeah.
careful, be not vulnerable, be, don't put yourself out there too much so that people could judge you, because people will judge you. And then we're taught how to judge other people and all of that. And this is a returning to that. We get to decide,
Mm.
we get to affirm what it is that we want to express.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think with that conditioning that you were talking about as well, that comes at all levels. And I'd like to remind people that every single artist has some form of self-doubt that comes into that process. Some of the most incredible pieces of art I've seen in a contemporary sphere from people who I consider, my contemporaries, have occasionally come off to me and gone, "Oh my God, it was dreadful. This means nothing," and da, 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 da. And you're like, "What?" But and you have to kind of sit there and go, it happens to everybody. But that idea of art and play and creativity being essentially worthless is echoed on such a consistent basis that we now even have, the CEO of Spotify. I think his name. What was his name? His name was, one second, Daniel Ek. Daniel Ek went on record saying we should stop calling ourselves artists and consider ourselves content creators. Stop creating albums, only release a single every week kind of thing. Now, the problem that we have here, he wants to remove the term artist, which tells you everything about how that person views an artistic process, which is never consistent. I can tell you that I go through a 6-month period where I am extremely creative. I will have months at a time where I feel creative, and then months at a time where I am empty. To be perfectly honest, within the frame of things at the moment, I'm just coming out of a phase where I felt like I was drowning, because I had nothing in me creatively. We have people saying, don't call yourself artists. Look at it like a machine. Imagine it as a conveyor belt to create yourself, to make money. This is the death of art. Having a practice is good, however, having I have no choice, this is how this works, it has to look this way, is never a good foundation for creativity. It
No,
is the exact worst thing for creativity.
because if we're creating content, then
Mm-hmm.
that's for others to consume. It
Yeah.
is then just a consumer society. And
Yes.
that can't be all that we are.
Yeah, exactly.
I think when you talk about, and a lot of artists have taken their
Yeah.
content off of Spotify,
Mm.
for differing political reasons.
Mm.
These are artists who don't allow anyone to dictate to them what and how they
Mm.
record and what and how they express. They
I
just
will
don't.
also add that a lot of the musicians who have taken up the arms on that, I admire their stance, but I would also say when they tell younger artists, as in like fledgling artists, "Oh well, you shouldn't be," that's an extreme level of privilege.
Absolutely.
It's an extreme level of privilege. I just wanted to put that in there because a lot of artists recently have said that, and I'm like, no, you don't get to say that. There's very
No.
few platforms available to artists to be discovered on and to work through consistently and make money.
Yeah.
And Spotify, Amazon, and a lot of these things have set themselves up to be that corner in the market.
Sure,
So
and they will get discovered. That's why they're producing art.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah,
And the likes of Joni Mitchell, who is one of the ones who took her music off of Spotify, for political stance, um, was was talking about, I understand why young artists need these platforms.
yeah,
I would never judge somebody who doesn't put their music up there
mm,
because they need to, but
yeah,
they shouldn't need to
yeah,
on a platform where it's dictated. They
yeah,
should be, they shouldn't need that,
yeah,
They should be able to express their music and have it be
mm,
out there, or their art
yeah,
and have it be out there,
Mm.
without the gatekeepers.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's a really important thing. And I think once the privileged artists who have decades and millions of fans and so on behind them,
Yeah.
then that's a really different thing. But
Yeah.
again, that comes back to not judging, right? If it's
Yeah.
right for you, then it's right. And if it's not
Exactly.
right for you, it's right for me to remove my content. It's not right for you. I don't get to judge you, just like I
Right.
don't get to judge my neighbors for their Saturday night disco. I'm
Exactly.
I'm working hard to not
I
just,
get you. I get you.
we all get to have our own opinion,
Yes.
and I get to have that. I think there's a difference between opinion and judgment, right?
Yeah.
So if you go to an art gallery, you're not going to love everything that's
Mm.
in there,
Yeah.
even though it's held in esteem and it's been, put in that gallery because of that. You're not going to appreciate it, or it's not going to speak to you. That doesn't mean it's wrong. And I
Yeah.
get to have my opinion and say, I don't enjoy this. It doesn't speak to me. I, I'm not. It just isn't doing it for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's really different to the artist should never have created this. What was Picasso thinking?
And it's also different to the idea that, that the artist should create for a specific audience, as well. There's the idea that everyone has an opinion on art, but not everyone understands that their opinion is not always needed. So sometimes people will, apropos, literally of nothing, they will come up to you and they will give you an opinion on something, whether or not you asked for it, were looking for it, or indeed they had any qualification to say that. Sometimes people will come up and have ridiculous opinions of things, and it is none of their business, unless you are asking specifically. And for especially this is, I think that inner critic comes out when we're doing it for work, for ourselves. Well, I can't do that because I shouldn't, because I wasn't good at it, or I didn't, I'm not supposed to take part in this exercise. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you're a singer,
Mm.
and I've heard you sing many times. You're fabulous.
Thank you.
What does it take to sing in public for the first time?
Ooh, so I'm what you would call an introverted extrovert, extroverted introvert. That's the way around. So I have a bit of a thing in that I just love it. I think the thing about it for me is I kind of need to do it on a regular basis, it turns out, because I will lose my mind if I don't regularly sing. I think I've gotten to the point now where I actually it doesn't necessarily have to be for an audience, as long as I can do it and vocalize and do it, because I used to do it all the time as a kid and just sing and sing and sing, no matter what was happening, where I was, what was going on. I was on the beach singing, I can tell you. I was and it was anywhere you could imagine me singing. I was doing it, singing into the wind, pretending that no one could hear me.
And this is, Mom, if you have video footage, I will pay money for that.
Oh, honestly, I don't think there's video footage. There's photographs of me dressed as a young Catwoman, because obviously I wanted to be Catwoman in all of her guises. But yeah, so I think for me it just feels natural. It just does. I'm gonna do it. I have to. That isn't to say I don't feel nervous. That isn't to say I don't get the nerves every single time, and I do. I get nerves every time I go on stage. No matter how big or small that stage is, I still have nerves. I think because it's so important to me, it's a compulsion that goes beyond the nerve. At a certain point, I have to do it. Even sometimes when I don't want to, the minute that first note starts to come out and I start to feel confident in the vocal, as soon as I can feel the music, then that's what takes you through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there is something in our skeleton when we sing, because I'm not a singer. When I have sung around other people, most especially my children, who are probably the most judgmental, almost like, there's a physical reaction. So I know that I'm not singing in the key that they would love to hear. Let's just say it like that. But I sing in the car. I
Yeah.
sing. I love, and when I'm not, when I don't spend time in the car, like in lockdown, it's like I didn't have an outlet. There's no way I was going to sing in my house because one of my children lives with me, and they go that would just be more than I could handle. But I sing in my car. I love the vibration, the skeletal
Mhm.
vibration,
Yeah.
uh, that connection and that expression. And
Hmm.
it's not for anybody else. But when you sing on a stage or when you put an album out there, then you are putting it out there. That's where the vulnerability comes in,
Hmm.
because let's say on a stage you're performing for somebody, right?
It depends on the context. It
Ah.
depends on the context. Sometimes I'm performing for an audience. For instance, I work a regular brunch show as a drag brunch show. I am performing for that audience. I'm performing the music that I want to perform, but I'm still performing for that audience. So I will do certain things within that. There'll be nudges and winks towards I'll pick certain songs that they might not always know, but are certain to move along a show. However, if I'm singing something from my own record, it's a very different set of performances. Interestingly enough, there's an article that's just going around. I can't remember who put this out, but it is a reputable publication, if I remember correctly, stating that humans have evolved specifically to play music and to interpret music. It's one of the things that we have done. It's probably based on the foundation of mammalian communication. Mammals all over the world develop extremely intricate neural pathways when it comes to vocalizations and creating alphabets and things like that. Everything from prairie dogs have these insane alphabets that they use. So we have to interpret sound in lots of these ways. And I think it's quite interesting you bring up skeletally, because you can certainly, like, everybody feels that movement, even if you don't have, say, even if you're not a hearing person, you will still interpret sound through vibration. I think our bodies are still, very receptive to that information. I think it can change us quite substantially, actually. I think it can heavily change a mood. There are certain sounds I specifically look for within artists' repertoire because I have found them immediately calming. Some of the calmest I've ever been is listening to one particular song, which I won't go into, but there's one particular song where a performer hits a certain note and she does it with a very specific rasp on her voice, and it is the sound of pure release. I cannot describe it in any other way. It is nirvana. It is pure release. It is the most free I have ever felt. If someone gets that from listening to a piece of music or interpreting sound through that vibration, then why would you not allow them to do it? It is essential, I think, to be able to immerse ourselves in that form of sound at some point, to enjoy it and play with it on an extremely personal level. You get to enjoy the sound and the music and interpret it in the way you want to interpret it. That isn't for anybody else to do.
No, and I guess what we're talking about here is when you're performing in cabaret,
Mm-hmm.
or um or even if you were drawing something, because I know you draw beautifully as well, so more reasons to hate you. But because we be in the early days of Confidence Through Cabaret, I would try and draw what I envisioned our logo would be, and it wasn't recognizable. And so this would very kindly try and interpret that in.
But I'm no master draftsman.
But you are. But what I mean is, when you're singing or performing a cabaret,
Mm-hmm.
or when you're drawing in a commercial sense, in other words, for other people, for their
Yes,
entertainment, for their consumption, that is quite a different intention
it is.
than performing for yourself, because
Yeah.
you have chosen to perform that, and your audience basically can go to hell.
That is very correct. That is very correct. And I think you have to bring a little bit of that into every aspect of it. There has to be a little bit of fuck you, essentially, excuse my language, but there has to be a little bit of that because sometimes people will just announce their feelings to you, whether or not they're accurate or not, and they will base that on their idea of what they think you should be doing. And sometimes they can be very limiting and insulting things. So you have to have a certain amount of, this is still for me, and I'm still going to enjoy the piece that I'm working with. I'm still going to enjoy that, and bring it through. But it does affect how you put yourself across. And I think for slightly more corporate events, I'm probably a little less emotionally invested in things, because it is more about how it's more about creating a mood in that moment. Whereas if I'm running a specific show or doing my own material, I'm really trying to focus on the intention of that piece a little bit more than I am, otherwise.
But intention is everything. Intention is everything, right? Even if you're talking about problem solving in your business, then it's about, okay, this is the actual isolated problem or solution that I'm working towards.
Yes.
And then we create from that intention.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so important, to know what your intention is, rather than, if I pick up a pen or a pencil. See, I don't even draw because I'm talking about picking up a pen. But if I'm picking up
pens,
well, no,
limiting beliefs going on here.
I don't know. I don't even know where I would start. But but there's no intention there. So
Right.
there's no. If my intention was just to express, and somebody in
Which
the
is a perfectly reasonable intention, by the way.
yeah, absolutely. If it's just to express, then I could just express.
Yeah.
And I could just, create lines,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to. Because my intention wasn't to create meaning. My intention wasn't to convey something. My intention was just express.
Right.
And so that intention is so key.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's whole schools of art have been founded on the idea of creating something that is the purest artistic expression. People have never answered it, because there's so many variations and forms, that you can never really be truly certain of, how can you create just art? The idea of that, it's so insane, and wonderful as a result, by the way.
Absolutely.
But yeah, whole schools of thought and philosophy and art have been based on that exact presumption, and if you're just doodling on a piece of scrap paper with, on a post-it note out the corner of your eye when you're on the phone to somebody, that is a form of creation and artistic process. That is you literally creating just because. So if you can doodle on a piece of paper, it doesn't have to be something, just abstract shapes. Doesn't matter. If you're doing that, that is your mind, your body creating. That is your expression coming out. It's doing it somewhere. Always. There's always some form of it.
If you're an art teacher, please get in touch, because 2 of my children were told doodling is a waste of time. So I know. So
Right.
let's one of whom has my artistic eye, as in for drawing, is really basic stick people, and the other is a very accomplished drawer painter in themselves, and both told that same thing.
Yeah.
How that limiting belief comes into play is very different. So it's quite dangerous. What other
literally, what is a sketchbook?
Exactly. Don't even get me started with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times teachers don't understand the basics of belief systems and the harm that they're creating in terms of the affirmations of, I can't draw, I can't dance, I can't sing, I can't whatever.
Oh, some of the most creative people I know have been told literally every single step of their, especially of their academic life, as a trying art and going to art classes by any teacher from primary school upwards. They have been told without a doubt that they were untalented. Some of these people are some of the most accomplished, fine artists I've ever seen. Will have an eye for aesthetic detail that is beyond stylists that I've seen on being paid a lot of money. I've seen people come out with huge budget sets, coming out with absolute garbage ideas for how something will be done, only to see my sister come out with something absolutely spectacular in a second. Oh, I wonder if this would look great this way. Yes, it would. Yes, it would. You know?
Yeah. 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 And if I believed, because art isn't the only way that we express our
Mhm.
creativity, if I believed that I wasn't artistic and therefore not creative, then I wouldn't have had the career in business that I've had, where
Right.
corporations paid me a lot of money to
Mhm.
come in with creative solutions, because
Yes.
my creativity comes from play.
Yeah.
My creativity comes from what if, and from
Right.
curiosity, and from just random association of things that
Mm.
actually comes to a, okay, that sounds ridiculous, but there
Well,
is some
no.
merit in that. And then
Yeah.
kind of pulling that back and kind of going, actually, this is a solution that'll work for increasing business.
Yeah.
So creativity doesn't have to be any kind of art. It can be
Mm.
lots of different things.
Yes, absolutely.
So I want to ask you,
Yeah.
what is next for you in your creative ventures?
Well, I think next for me is potentially, well, there's an EP that'll start being worked on. There's a third album that's half worked on. There's a bunch of different things coming. There's a new set of uh, illustrations and prints coming out on a very different aspect of what I do. Um, so they'll be coming out hopefully in the next month and a half. If I get my time scale right, they should all be available. So watch that. And the rest of the time, it'll be touring my brand new record, Vulturine, which is available at dismusic.bandcamp.com. Thank you very much.
But go check it out. Do go and check it out, and go and check out Fragments as well, because they're very beautiful, different expressions.
Oh yeah, one is dark as hell, and the other one is much lighter.
Yeah, and I love that. It just if you want to explore your creativity, then look at just look at the difference in that, and how that played out, and know that there aren't limits. It's not, you sing this genre of music and
Mhm.
that's who you are, and that's
Exactly.
what you do. And I'm trying not to name names, Ed Sheeran, Taylor
Yeah.
Swift. Um, but but I think when we
He doesn't write his own music. Joking.
no, yeah, let's not even go there. Let's not even go there, because I'm sure that Ed Sheeran has a fan or two. But it's that whole kind of thing of that it's very clear that you're not doing this for commercial. You're doing this for expression. You're doing
Yeah.
this to put that out there, and that is healing for
Yeah.
you. That
Don't get me
is
wrong. I would like the money.
like, you need to go and check out Vulturine and Fragments.
Right? Because creating is lovely, even in a vacuum, but it would also be nice to be paid for my work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I think when we find our audience, when we find the people that it's right for,
Mhm.
then you people, when you find something that's right for you, you need to support those artists. You need to encourage that creativity. You
Yeah.
need to give back to what is given to you.
Yeah.
Because back to the original conversation at the beginning about, we're not valuing art enough,
Mhm.
that is important that we support it.
Right, and think about different avenues of expression. If you're used to hearing a certain sound or a certain style, have a trip down something else. Go and try and explore something different. When the first record I was doing was based on like a very sparse arrangement and then lots of cluttered arrangements, lots of industrial, lots of post-punk, lots of avant-garde stuff. Um, and as I wanted to move into the next phase of it, I was working more with like pop textures and stuff like that, and trying to look at different sounds and trying to incorporate a lightness to what I was doing. And I ended up using like hip hop instrumentation and electronic instrumentation in a very different way. I got to work with, my friend Jada Love, and we got to produce a lovely duet together. I know Jada is just, don't if you haven't checked out Jada Love, please check out Jada Love. She's
Yes.
just phenomenal. She's got her own work coming out as Volidage. There's a whole bunch of stuff she's just amazing, and her cover of Wicked Game, which is available online at the moment, is stunning.
Yeah.
But it was a case of try something new. Let's see where it takes us. Let's just experiment and play. Just allow that creativity, that play again to infuse in some aspect of your life. See where it takes you.
Well, I'm glad you said that. And I'm glad that you have put that out there about go and check out and try different things, try other genres as well. Where would you like people to find you? So Bandcamp?
So I'm the House of Dismater. That's HAUS of Dismater. That's OVDISMATER. And that's the same on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And then all of my music is available to stream online, so you can hear all of that available on Spotify or Amazon or iTunes or any of these places. Deezer as well if you're in Europe. And dismusic.bandcamp.com is all my official stuff, so you'll find the most of my stuff there.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And follow Dis on social media as well, because then you'll be able to learn more about some of the prints that are coming out as well.
Absolutely.
Which I have seen some of that outline of that work, and it is going to be spectacular. So do check that out as well.
And that's a very different speed. That's dinosaurs.
I know, but it's beautiful, right?
Thank
like I have limited interest in dinosaurs, but deep interest in the.
You hate the birds.
I don't hate anything really, but I appreciate the art, the detail, the eye of those prints.
Thank you.
And that is that for me, other people will enjoy it because they are into paleontology and that, so there would be different reasons why people would love those prints, but do check them out when they are released as well.
Thank you very much.
Dis, I normally ask people, what would your stage name be? But your stage name is?
Katie Homophobia.
Obviously.
My stage name is Dis. I am Dis.
It is. And I just want to ask you, if you were working with a prop on stage that you haven't worked with before.
Oh.
Nice try, because I know you. What would you work with?
The thing I probably would go for now, because I've never done anything with it and I haven't done a strip routine in a long time, is to use like a classic boa. I'd really like to use some classic props, something that's a little bit more of the burlesque canon that I haven't really worked with before. I've done bits and pieces using like certain like fan silk pieces before, but never done the boa. And I think there's just something still so very alluring about working with that. There's something about the wrapping in and out of it, the tangle of it, the fact that it becomes not only part of your ensemble, but then something part of your seduction and part of your narrative is really interesting.
Beautiful. I love that. And you've already explained why you want to use that prop. And I fully agree with you. I actually thought you were going to say fans, but right. I see the boa. I see the boa. I love that kind of that wrapping. I think that's
right.
And then unwrapping. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's tied up into a lot of serpentine movement. And whenever I see things like serpentine flow in stripcraft, I'm all over it. I love watching great serpentine flow. I just think it's beautiful.
Amazing. Look, if you want to explore, you don't have to have a boa. If you're listening to this or watching this, you could use a skipping rope. You could use string. You could use jute. You could use, anything to play with that and to feel what that's like to wrap and to unwrap and to move and feel its kind of, flow just on your own.
Exactly.
That's what we're talking about with exploring creativity and just trying out new things.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining me, Des.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thanks very much, everybody.
It's been a wonderful conversation. You can, if you can't remember all of the places to find Des, or you want to get in touch, with Confidence Through Cabaret. We are Confidence Through Cabaret on all of the socials, except for Twitter, which is at YB, YW, YS. And I am at Heather YBYWYS on Clubhouse, as well as Confidence and Attitudes Club on Clubhouse. Those 6 beautiful little letters stand for, say it with me, Des, because you helped me create this. This is
your body, your world, your stage.
Thank you so much for being here. It's such a pleasure to talk with you. And as always, you are an amazing friend of Confidence Through Cabaret. Thank you again. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.